Hello and welcome to our list of the best RPGs you can play on the Nintendo Switch. We've picked the games we think are essential if you're a Nintendo Switch owner that loves role-playing games. This list is dedicated to games new to this generation, so you won't find ports of old games or remasters on this list, just games that came out natively on the Nintendo Switch. Without further ado, let's get straight into our first game. This wouldn't be a best Switch RPGs video without us putting a Fire Emblem game on here, and we think Fire Emblem Three Houses is the best one on the Nintendo Switch. Yes, we know Fire Emblem Engage exists, and no, we don't think it's as good. Fire Emblem Three Houses is primarily set in Garreg Mach Monastery, which is home to the Officers Academy, where the future military commanders of the various factions of Fodlan train. It's like Hogwarts for soldiers, so don't tell me that doesn't sound cool. While at the academy, you'll attend classes, tackle side quests, and build relationships with your fellow students. You'll then lead these students onto the battlefield in an overarching plot that sees the state of Fodlan wage war against each other against a backdrop of political intrigue and struggle. The Fire Emblem series is known for having great turn-based rock-paper-scissors combat, and Three Houses delivers. You'll face a plethora of dangerous enemies while also trying to keep the friends you've made along the way alive. Fire Emblem Three Houses is hard to find in physical format these days because it came out way back in 2019, but you can still buy the game in the eShop, so if you see it on store shelves, snap it up while you can. Octopath Traveler and Octopath Traveler 2, its excellent sequel, are two of the most unique RPGs on the Nintendo Switch. These games were once Switch exclusives and they have well-written stories, beautiful graphics, and an incredible soundtrack. You don't need to play the first game before the second because it has a standalone story with completely new characters, but we recommend that you do because both of these games are absolute masterpieces. Octopath Traveler and Octopath Traveler 2 are set in different locations, but both games give you 8 main characters to play as, each of whom has their own story and skills. You can swap between any of these characters at any time as you play through the game, and each hero has their own goals and ambitions, but they all embark on an adventure throughout the game's world for their own unique reasons. Inevitably, these adventurers' stories end up overlapping, and that just adds to how cool these games are. The Octopath Traveler series features deep gameplay mechanics and strategic turn-based combat, as well as a graphical style that blends traditional pixel art with a new 2.5 dimension style. So those looking for a traditional turn-based RPG experience but with some modern innovation will want to check out the series. You can't have a list of the best Nintendo RPGs without also mentioning Pokemon and Game Freak somewhere along the way. We've picked Pokemon Legends Arceus for this list, however, because of the interesting innovation that the game brings to the table. Arceus takes players back to the roots of Pokemon when they still lived out in the wild and were first tamed, which is an incredibly exciting new direction for the series. It has a vast open world that just begs to be explored, and rewards players for doing so. Has a sense of scale almost equivalent to that of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and frankly it feels like Breath of the Wild if Link was asked to run around the world and capture Pokemon instead of saving Princess Zelda. The world of Pokemon Arceus just oozes style, and you'll often find yourself gawping at the traditional Japanese-inspired wooden buildings of the main town hub area. Head out into the wild, and you'll find yourself sneaking through the underbrush to capture that one rare Pokemon you've had your eyes on, so you better be accurate. No other Pokemon game comes close to providing this much sense of adventure. If you really want that traditional Pokemon experience, then you might want to look at other Pokemon games like Sword and Shield, but most of you will want to check out this fresh new take on Pokemon because we think it's one of the greatest Pokemon games ever made, and that's a bold claim. Here it is, boys and girls, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Xenoblade Chronicles is one of Nintendo's best RPG game series. Developed by Monolith Soft, each Nintendo console has gotten some kind of Xenoblade Chronicles game, and that's for a good reason. We've picked the emotionally charged Xenoblade Chronicles 3 for this list because it's a culmination of all the team's work so far, and it's just a fantastic game that everybody who loves RPGs should play. At over 100 hours long, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is the perfect game to play handheld on the Switch. There's a massive cast of characters that are up there with some of the best in gaming, and it's accompanied by some of the best RPG combat we've ever experienced. If you haven't played Xenoblade Chronicles 3, then you should also pick up its expansion pass and play the Future Redeemed DLC, which just adds the cherry on top of this mammoth RPG. There is literally no reason not to play this game, so go on and grab yourself a copy of the game today because no RPG fan should sleep on this one. Shin Megami Tensei is a core staple of RPGs, and in this case, JRPGs. The series has been around for decades at this point, and it has birthed tons of other unique spin off games like Persona. Fans of the series will find that Shin Megami Tensei 5 brings back everything they've come to expect. It has a high difficulty ceiling with tough combat that requires you to be strategic before striking. It also has a more serious tone than other similar games, with a narrative that deals with some pretty heavy topics. You'll spend most of your time in Shin Megami Tensei 5 building your ultimate team and dungeon crawling through some insane locations with them. This is also a great entry point into the series because each Shin Megami Tensei has a standalone story. So players who haven't experienced a Shin Megami Tensei game before don't need to worry about the 5 in the name. With tens of hours of gameplay, Shin Megami Tensei 5 is best suited to playing curled up with the Nintendo Switch in portable mode. Square Enix is the OG when it comes to RPGs because of their long lineage with the Final Fantasy games, but in case there was any ounce of doubt left in your mind, Bravely Default 2 is here to remind you all over again. But it's a sequel, I hear you cry, and you'd be right in doing so. But luckily, Bravely Default 2 has a story separate from the first game, so it can be played as a standalone game. Sure, you might miss a few references here and there, but the first game is trapped on the Nintendo 3DS, so you might as well just jump in here. You'll explore 5 different kingdoms with your party and battle enemies using a unique combat system that allows you to weigh up the risks of extra powerful attacks in exchange for future turns. If you're looking for a new take on the classic RPG, then we highly recommend Bravely Default 2 as a good place to start. It's a great game and we recommend it to everyone, including those who haven't played the first game. Listen, if you haven't played Disco Elysium yet, then I want you to pause this video, go to the eShop and buy this game right now. It is one of the best games of all time for people who love amazing storytelling and being able to shape the events of the game based on your decisions. The Final Cut version on Nintendo Switch features full voice acting and the characters are brought to life by the best acting in video games ever. This isn't just hyperbole either. You'll explore the city of Revachol as a detective who has amnesia, reinventing yourself, reinforcing stereotypes, and trying to solve a grisly murder. You can put points into tons of different skill trees, and this affects how you perceive the world and how your inner consciousness talks to you. It's a bit of a slow burn, and the game is meant to be savoured, so don't expect it to be action-packed, but it does exploration and discovery like no other game out there. We could go on and on about Disco Elysium The Final Cut, but you really should just go out and play the game. It's one of the best RPGs ever created and you won't be disappointed. You may have heard of or even played The World Ends With You on the Nintendo DS. It's a cult classic that was stuck on Nintendo's handheld for many years. Neo The World Ends With You is a sequel, but you don't need to have played the first game to understand it. The game unfolds in a very stylish version of Tokyo's Shibuya district, where players take control of Rindo, who is forced to compete in what is called the Reaper's Game. You have to fight monsters with psychic abilities to survive, and its 40-hour campaign has a crazily energetic soundtrack that will keep your blood pumping the whole time. We recommend Neo The World Ends With You to anyone looking for an RPG with a modern setting, rather than the typical fantasy worlds we come to expect from most titles in the genre. Described as a story-driven JRPG where a group of heroes travel around the vast continent of Volandis to bring an end to the war between its 3 kingdoms, Chained Echoes is at once a mix of all the classic JRPG tropes from the 1990s, but weaved into a modern experience that manages to feel like something new and exciting. While Chained Echoes features your typical turn-based combat, you won't find any annoying random encounters, and it has a vast world to explore with lots of quests to undertake along the way. So while this might look like another generic pixel art RPG on the outside, Chained Echoes has a lot more depth to its gameplay than meets the eye. This massive 40-hour RPG was created mostly by one individual too, which makes the game even more impressive. If you're in the mood for charming characters, fantastic landscapes, and vicious foes, then we think you should check out Chained Echoes because you'll have a great time. Sea of Stars is another RPG for those traditional turn-based enthusiasts. Part of the modern retro RPG trend, Sea of Stars is a perfect example of what makes JRPGs great. It's got great level design, gorgeous graphics, and some great music as well. Dubbed a retro-inspired turn-based RPG by its developer Sabotage, Sea of Stars tells the story of 2 children of the solstice who combine the powers of the sun and moon to perform eclipse magic, the only force capable of fighting off the monstrous creations of an evil alchemist known as the Fleshmancer. I mean, if that doesn't sound like an epic RPG adventure, then what is? Again, the Nintendo Switch's handheld mode comes to the rescue, letting you experience this one on the go. You'll definitely take advantage of this feature due to the sheer number of quests to complete and regions to explore. Sea of Stars should definitely be on your list. This one breaks away from the pack. Super Mario RPG is technically a remake of a game that came out on the Super Nintendo way back in the day, so it doesn't really count. It has loads of new features and additions, so it can almost be counted as its own original game in itself. A great entry point for newcomers, Super Mario RPG takes the usual cast of characters from the series, like Mario, Bowser, and Peach, and turns the Wacky Plumber series up to 11. In an unusual twist, Super Mario RPG has turn-based combat, asking you to once again rescue Peach from Big Bowser. How many times does she need saving? Fear not, there is still a boatload of exploration, and even some platforming elements. Super Mario RPG has all the charm of your usual Mario game too, so it's a perfect mix of combat, adventure, and hilariously weird story for all you RPG fans out there. Come on, it's Mario, you have to buy it. South Park: The Fractured But Whole is a direct sequel to The Stick of Truth, and once again places you in the shoes of the new kid. The whole kooky cast of offensive kids returns, and you'll be teaming up with all your favourite South Park characters to take down Professor Chaos. South Park: The Fractured But Whole isn't just a meme game though. It has a bunch of cool mechanics, like being able to fully customise your character. It's a fully fledged RPG too, with main quests, side quests, and turn-based combat that poses a real difficulty if not approached correctly. South Park: The Fractured But Whole will have you laughing the whole way along, and that's one of the main selling points of the game. Trey Parker and Matt Stone helped write and develop the game themselves, so you know it's going to be a good time. It's an excellent game and a great to check out if you're looking to inject some laughs into your day. It's a worthy addition to this list of best Switch RPGs. The Witcher 3 needs no introduction. It's the last and best game in the Witcher series, but many players only started their journey with Geralt in The Witcher 3 because the first two went relatively unnoticed in the mainstream gaming sphere. So it's perfectly fine for you to start here because it has a recap cutscene at the start that gives you all the backstory you need to know. In The Witcher 3, you're Geralt of Rivia, a mercenary monster slayer. But things aren't that simple. Various factions in the game's world are at war, and you're trying to track down a prophetic child who can save the world from an impending supernatural disaster. Geralt has to balance making money and saving locals from creatures who lurk in the shadows with overarching political intrigue and world events. You'll spend hundreds of hours exploring The Witcher 3's carefully crafted world and completing its seemingly thousands of quests that all affect how the story plays out. This is a properly mature RPG that's as bleak and dirty as the White Orchard Inn. If that's your cup of tea, then dive in with both feet. Last but not least on our list of the best RPGs you can play on the Nintendo Switch is Persona 5 Royal. Set in modern day Tokyo, Persona 5 puts you in the role of a recent transfer student with a troubled past. Like all Persona games, you end up uncovering your nighttime role as Persona user and apathy destroyer, crawling through dungeons on a time limit to take on bosses. But it's not all combat. Persona 5 has an extensive social system that allows you to spend time developing relationships with your party of interesting characters outside of dungeons too. You'll attend school classes, eat at restaurants, and do all kinds of side activities that help break up and balance out the dungeon crawling. Persona 5 Royal is the definitive edition of the game and comes with all the DLC and the ability to swap between Japanese and English voiceovers. Persona 5 Royal is the most stylish game on this list, and it's an RPG that will satiate players looking for a modern game that puts just as much emphasis on hanging out with cool characters and its jazz soundtrack as it does collecting new personas and beating up bad guys. That's our list of the best RPGs to play on the Nintendo Switch console. From the dark and moody Disco Elysium to the upbeat Persona 5, you can't go wrong playing any of these games. And they all play fantastically on the Nintendo Switch. Drop us a comment and let us know if you agree or disagree with our picks and give us your recommendations for the best Nintendo Switch RPGs.